episode, we're going to focus on leadership. And to join us today, we have Dr. Marissa Prather. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background, about yourself.
As Beverly mentioned, I am Dr. Marissa Prather. I am the founder and CEO of Prather Education. I've been in education for almost 3 decades now. During my time in education, it has spanned from the classroom to the principalship to district level leadership and now to supporting all levels of leadership and teachers in the classroom.
Great. All right. Well, we're excited to dig in and glean some of your knowledge on leadership. The first thing I want to ask about was everybody today seems to use the term strategic leadership, but it seems a little bit more like a buzzword. So, how would you define the difference between being a good manager and then being a strategic leader?
That is an excellent question, and you're right. It has become one of those buzzwords in education. When we think about strategy, strategy is it's simply a series of aligned steps and actions in order to achieve our desired result or the desired outcome that we want. When we're thinking about a strategic leader, they must do the same thing. But when they're thinking about that desired outcome, it has to span beyond proficiency. And so when we're thinking about desired outcomes, we think about our human capital, we think about our culture, we think about performance and growth, and then how do we keep up with that consistent growth over time? So a truly strategic leader looks at their classrooms, they look at their climate data, and they make decisions in those series of aligned steps and actions with keeping that desired result, that end goal in mind at all times.
All right, so I can see as a leader that that's going to be your end goal, but there are always those things going on, those smaller things that you have to attend to. So, how do you balance the tyranny of urgency, putting out those small fires, with the goals that you have, the strategic goals that you have for the organization?
I'm going to use an analogy, and the analogy is the Swiss Army knife. When you look at what a Swiss Army knife and you're boiling it down, it is one tool with multiple options for us to use. So when we're thinking about urgency versus looking at how we're going to perform and address a situation, the first thing that we have to do is pause. We have to take time to actually assess the situation. When we are so quick to be reactionary, it can cause us to actually do more work and have to take steps backwards. So we pause, we assess the situation, and then we think about pulling out that tool, that Swiss Army knife. Which tool will work best in this situation? Sometimes it's a screwdriver. Sometimes you're going to need a file when you're thinking about refinement. Sometimes you need the blade when you're thinking about cutting through the confusion and providing clarity. Sometimes we need the scissors to cut away the fluff. So, as a leader, instead of focusing on, I have to make a decision right now, is pause, assess the situation, find the right tool for that situation. Then we take action. And then, as we are going through that action, we're refining those steps based upon the inputs that we're receiving from our performance.
Okay, I love that analogy. I think that makes a clear picture. I feel like. So I know that sometimes the strategy is as much about what you don't do as what you do. So can you share with us about making a decision to say no to something that was a good idea but didn't necessarily align with the strategic goals of the organization?
Absolutely. And one of the key indicators of, wow, this is a really great idea, but one, it may not be in alignment with my strategic goals for that particular year, but it's also how will this impact my staff? We have to think about those compounding effects of a decision that we make. We go to a conference, we get excited, we see this great idea, we want to bring it back, but we have to pause again and assess what does this one fit in with our initiatives for this current school year? But then, two, how is this going to impact the flow with my people? Because when we're thinking about our teachers in the classroom, teachers are boots on the ground. Teachers are doing the work. And so, even though it might sound like a good idea, that idea could actually come in and be a disruptor. And what we don't want to do is disrupt the system that we've worked so hard to create because we have yet another idea.
Right, makes sense. Um, well, you know, big data is big now. And so, as a strategic leader, um, how do you still decide when you just need to go on your gut instinct about things and maybe that may not actually align as closely with the data?
When we think about data, it is very important for us to think about two key components. When we're looking at data, we look at proficiency, but we also look at growth. We look at both. Proficiency doesn't tell the whole story, neither does growth. Data doesn't lie, but data tells us a story. It is our job to take that data and create the narrative of what our present level of performance is, what our situation is. And sometimes as leaders, we do want to go with our gut, but sometimes our gut can lead us in the wrong
Right,
direction.
right.
Again, we have to think about the people in which we are serving. We never want to weaponize data. If you're only looking at proficiency and every time you have a conversation, it centers solely on proficiency, then leaders can sometimes have a tendency to weaponize that data. So we always want to make sure that we're looking at both because growth is such a powerful tool and it is an indicator that the systems and the structures that we've put into place are being effective. Growth comes before proficiency. You can't have proficiency without growth. And so, therefore, we must take the time to celebrate that growth with our staff, continue to push and get those gains. And so, again, sometimes we have to say and have a gut check with ourselves and say, it's not time just yet.
Right. Yeah, that certainly seems like growth, like you said, growth is going to have to come first. So if you're not celebrating that growth, you could get very discouraged. I would think your teachers could get very discouraged. So that kind of brings to this next question. If you have a strategy in place and you're not so sure that it's working, maybe that growth is not showing. How do you decide when a strategy just needs to be changed, abandoned, maybe come up with a new strategy, or when you just need to push through and give that strategy a chance to work?
For us, it is very important not to, in education, we love change. We love coming up with new initiatives and new cycles and new words for the same things that we've always done. And so when we're thinking about pivoting, we have to really be mindful of, have I given this initiative enough time? Growth happens inevitably, not instantly. And oftentimes, as leaders, when we put something into place, we are expecting instantaneous results. And you may not get those results instantaneously. And so, if you've given it an appropriate amount of time to work, you have implemented with fidelity, you've checked to make sure that the true implementation has taken place, then before you just cut something, we should be having conversations with those that we serve. Pull in your leadership team, talk about the initiatives. Sometimes a full pivot is not necessary. We don't have to necessarily throw out the baby with the bathwater. We need to pull out that file if we're thinking about our Swiss Army knife and refine. Where is it working? Where is it not working? What tweaks and adjustment needs to be made. But again, having those conversations with our leadership team and not just making true gut decisions and, well, that didn't work. We're going to go on to the next and on to the next, on to the next. That leads us into that cycle of continuous underperformance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I have a question. When you have those strategies in place and you're expecting certain results, but maybe you're not seeing the results you expected, at least not right away, and you're talking about refining and things, but for those boots on the ground, for those teachers, how do you keep them invested in that strategy if they're not seeing the outcome that they were hoping to see right away?
That is an excellent question. And I'm going to go back to my handy dandy Swiss Army knife. And this time I'm going to pull out the magnifying glass. Sometimes when our view is too far back and we're so hopeful, we've implemented this strategy, we've committed to this strategy, and we've done it for an entire 9 weeks period, and we're looking for this grandiose result. It can feel disheartening when we don't see that immediate outcome, that immediate change. And that's when we have to pull out the magnifying glass and identify those details. that have changed. And making sure that we have those conversations. We're listening to the voices of our teachers and hearing from them what they feel like might be potential barriers, what might be potential opportunities for us to grow and improve this strategy. But again, pulling out that magnifying glass and taking a more detailed look at the situation and then saying, we had to win here. And this is where growth can be very substantial because when we're looking at straight proficiency and we're looking from one measure to the next, and we're looking at that big statistical proficiency score and it only went up 1%. But when we take that step back and we're thinking about our four quadrants and we've gone from low performance and low growth to now we still might have low proficiency, but now we're in the high growth category. And so again, it's making sure that they can see the outcome of that work.
There's always something to celebrate.
Absolutely.
And I feel like as the leader, if they see you excited and celebrating, that's gonna trickle down. All right, I'm gonna get a little personal. Think back over your leadership career, and what is one mistake that you made, something that you did that as a leader now that you've learned, you would go back and tell yourself differently?
I would say pacing. Um, as the principal of Whitesburg, there was a time period where we were seeking international STEM certification and national STEM certification at the same time. In my mind, I thought two birds with one stone. The two certifications complemented each other. And again, as a leader, I momentarily, temporarily lost the perspective of yes, this is great. Yes, this is changing instruction for the students, but it was a heavy lift for my staff and for my teachers. And I did acknowledge it in the moment that this wasn't one of my better ideas. We were successful. We did earn international and national STEM certification and became the most decorated STEM public elementary school, which was wonderful. But there was a cost, and that cost was the weight that I put on my teachers. And so if I could go back, that would have been spaced out. I love the way it totally transformed our instruction and our classroom environment. But again, we have to be mindful that our people are human. They have second shifts where they have to go home to their loved ones,
Right.
and so that would be one of those
Right.
things that
Okay,
I would
that's a
change.
good one. So, as we wrap up today, then I really would like for you to leave our audience with our leaders that are listening with something that you feel like is something they could implement to keep them focused, to keep them their strategic muscles sharp.
The first thing that I would say would be find their genius. When you're looking at your staff, every single person on your staff has a genius. They have something that they do well, something that you could leverage, something that makes them feel seen and feel valued. And a strategic leader knows what that is from every single person in their building. And so not only figure out what that genius is, but honor it, respect it, and cultivate it. Because as you cultivate capacity in the teachers and the staff that you have in your building rises together. We rise by lifting others. And so for us as leaders, that is our goal. We want to make sure that we are rising by lifting others and bringing them along with us. We're honoring the work in the same breath as we are refining the craft.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for all of that great information. I feel like the leaders out there really have a lot to work with based on some things you said. So they can take that and run with it. I know that you also had a resource that you wanted to share with our listeners today. So can you tell us what that resource is?
Absolutely. As I referenced when I was speaking, the Swiss Army knife, if you will comment Swiss Army knife, I will send you a resource that will show you all the tools available to you that you should be using as you're providing that instructional coaching. It focuses on school improvement. So, again, comment Swiss Army knife and you'll receive that resource.
I love that. All right. So be sure you comment so you can get that. Also, Be sure to like the episode, tell your friends about our episode, and come back for our next episode of PratherED Talks, where we will always be helping you to turn potential into